The restaurant was buzzing with the soft hum of conversation, the faint clinking of cutlery, and the low crackle of old country music playing through a dusty speaker near the counter. It was just another Sunday afternoon at Marlowe's Diner, the kind of place where regulars came for comfort food and a break from the world outside. But on this particular day, something different was happening. Something silent, desperate, and hidden beneath the calm chatter and smell of pancakes. At a booth in the far corner, a little girl with golden hair sat quietly, her tiny hands trembling as she clutched the edge of her purple hoodie. Her blue eyes darted around the room nervously, studying faces, searching for something or someone she could trust. Beside her sat a man with rough stubble, sunglasses, and a look that could freeze anyone who dared to stare too long. To most, he looked like a father having lunch with his daughter, but anyone who looked closely would have noticed the tension, the girl's shoulders tight, her lips trembling, and the bruise just visible under her sleeve. She wasn't here for pancakes. She was here because she was terrified. And that's when a group of bikers walked in. They were loud, rugged, and carried the kind of presence that made the entire diner fall silent for a second. Leather vests with patches, tattooed arms, and faces weathered by the road. They looked like trouble. But they weren't. They were members of the Iron Souls, a motorcycle club known in their small town not for chaos, but for compassion. They helped veterans, rescued abandoned pets, and raised money for local kids. And today, without realizing it, they were about to help someone who desperately needed saving. If you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, then pause for a moment. Hit the like button, share this story, and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next will remind you that real heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. The leader of the bikers, a tall man named Hank, was the first to notice something off. He had seen enough in life to recognize fear. It had a look, a rhythm, a quiet scream behind the eyes. The little girl sitting in the corner wasn't just shy. She looked like she was trying to tell the world something without saying a word. Hank's gut tightened as he watched her subtly wave her hand across her chest, her fingers twitching in a way that seemed deliberate, purposeful. It was then that he remembered something. A news article he'd once read about a secret hand signal for help, a simple gesture used by victims to silently ask for rescue in public spaces. Hank's eyes narrowed. He watched again. The girl made the same motion, tucking her thumb under her fingers and closing them over it. It was quick, almost invisible, but it was there. She was signaling for help. Without saying a word, Hank placed his hand on the counter, signaling to his brothers behind him. They didn't need words. Years of loyalty had taught them to read each other's body language. One biker moved toward the exit, blocking the door casually, pretending to scroll through his phone. Another took a seat at a nearby booth with a clear view of the man and the girl. Hank approached the counter and ordered coffee, keeping the man in his peripheral vision. The stranger sitting with the girl leaned back, his jaw tight. He looked uncomfortable, irritated even, as if he could sense that the balance of control was slipping. The little girl's breathing quickened. She looked down at her lap, clutching the hem of her hoodie. Hank noticed the faint mark on her wrist, like a rope burn. Something inside him snapped. He took his coffee, thanked the waitress softly, and turned toward the girl's table. He smiled gently at her, trying to look harmless. "Hey, sweetheart," he said in a calm, friendly voice. "That's a nice jacket you've got there." The man's head jerked up immediately, his eyes cold. "Mine." "Your own business," he growled. Hank didn't flinch. "Just being friendly," he replied, his tone even but heavy with quiet authority. The tension in the diner grew thicker. The other customers sensed something wrong. The waitress stepped back, unsure of what to do. Then the man grabbed the girl's wrist, pulling her closer. She whimpered, her eyes wide with fear. That was all it took. The bikers moved in. In an instant, the calm diner turned into a storm of motion. One biker stepped between the man and the exit. Another gently took the girl's hand, pulling her to safety. The man tried to stand, but Hank grabbed his shoulder and pushed him back down, his voice low but commanding. "Sit down." The man hesitated, then looked around, every path blocked, every eye on him. He sat back, his confidence cracking. The girl clung to Hank's arm, tears streaming down her cheeks. He bent down and whispered, "You're safe now, kid. You did the right thing." When the police arrived a few minutes later, the truth spilled out like a flood. The man wasn't her father. He had taken her from a park 2 towns over. She'd been missing for nearly 3 days. Her photo was already circulating on social media, her mother begging for help. The hand signal she used, one she'd learned from a YouTube safety video at school, had saved her life. The officers took the man away in handcuffs, and the little girl stood beside Hank, holding onto his hand tightly, refusing to let go. Her small body trembled as relief washed over her. When her mother finally arrived at the diner, she ran into her daughter's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The sight brought tears to the eyes of even the toughest bikers in the room. Hank stepped back quietly, wiping his face with the back of his hand. He wasn't one for praise or attention. He'd seen enough in his life, enough loss, enough darkness, to know that sometimes all it takes is one small act of paying attention to change everything. The police thanked the bikers for their help, calling them heroes. But Hank only shook his head. "We're not heroes," he said softly. "She is. That little girl saved herself. We just listened." As the crowd slowly cleared, the diner returned to its quiet hum. But something about the place felt different now, lighter, warmer, as if kindness had left a permanent mark on its walls. The waitress brought over slices of pie for the bikers on the house, her hands trembling as she placed them down. "You boys did something good today," she said with a smile. "Real good." That night, Hank rode home under the fading sunset, the sound of the engine echoing through the hills. He thought about the little girl's face, her fear, her courage, her silent cry for help that had found its way to him. He thought about how easy it would have been to look away, to ignore the signs, to assume everything was fine. But he didn't, and that made all the difference. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the Iron Souls clubhouse. It was written in a child's handwriting, sealed with a drawing of a heart and a motorcycle. Inside, it said, "Thank you for saving me. Mommy says I can sleep now without bad dreams. You're my heroes forever." The men passed the letter around, each one silent, their rough hands trembling slightly. For men who had spent years on the road, battling storms and scars of their own, that simple message meant more than any medal ever could. Hank pinned the letter to the wall of their clubhouse right above the bar. It stayed there, a reminder that sometimes strength isn't in fists or engines, but in the choice to care. A reminder that even the smallest hand signal can be a cry for help, and that listening, truly listening, can save a life. The next weekend, they organized a charity ride for missing children's awareness. Dozens of bikers from nearby towns joined in, their engines roaring through the streets as they carried signs that read, "See something, say something, and every child matters." The little girl and her mother stood by the roadside, waving as they passed. Hank slowed his bike, smiled, and gave her a thumbs up. She smiled back, her face glowing in the sunlight, free, safe, alive. That day, the entire town learned something powerful. Heroes don't always look like the ones in movies. Sometimes they're the ones with tattoos, leather jackets, and hearts big, enough to listen to a frightened little girl's silent call for help. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, a small act of awareness can save a life. Always be kind, always be alert, and never ignore when someone's eyes are silently asking for help. Before you go, drop a comment below. What would you have done if you saw that little girl's signal? Because maybe, just maybe, one day, your awareness could make you the hero in someone else's story.